Well, hello there. It's another day. I'm Jim Harrington.
And I am Bill Knight. Good Friday to you as we get set for the long Memorial Day weekend. And depending where you are I guess the weather's kind of really the Midwest, the Northeast.
Yep.
Not too good.
This guy, my cohort here, he's a dedicated man because he's traveling and he's on the road, but yet he took the time out to make sure he was with us this morning with his remote setup, which is it's kind of neat. You can be anywhere nowadays and do a show.
Yeah. Now, a different microphone and different mixer, but it's a studio mixer that's you could literally put in your pocket, and it does everything the bigger ones do. But actually, I traveled, and I'm here. I'm, like the old song says, weekend in New England. Anybody that's been up in the Maine area, they might know where the Marginal Mile is. And that's where I am for the weekend, a little getaway up here that we like to go to. But it's...
If you're looking to say hello, just go hotel to hotel, knock on all the doors, and eventually you...
Yeah, I don't know that I'm going to walk the Marginal Mile. If you don't know what it is, it's a trail that's up, high up, you look down, you see the rocks and the waves crashing, in some areas, usually it's wide, but some areas are a little bit narrow there, but it's,
I've stopped doing stuff like that. I don't trust my knees.
80% safe.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
It's that 20% that would get me.
Well, it's windy and it's wet and it's rock. And I'm going, that's the trifecta. That would be the Knightster taking the swan dive.
They would say, I saw Mr. Harrington do the half gainer into the
yeah, and I look down, the rocks aren't rounded or they don't have pillows on them.
It makes for an uncomfortable landing. It's not the fall that'll get you, it's the sudden stop,
Yeah, we could call the My Pillow guy and say, could you put pillows on those rocks before I go? Always make sure that the water's in when I hit, so I have enough room to splash.
Hey,
splash down.
A lot of stuff to talk about, believe it or not. Although, what's interesting? You can tell it's a Friday. You know how the Friday mornings, for some reason, historically, seem to be the softest time for news. They usually do their serious news dumps on Friday afternoon. So if we were doing the show later in the day, we might have more stuff to talk about. But then we'll have a lot. Go ahead, Bill.
I was going to say today's news is kind of yesterday's news. But there's big old news that carries over, and the Dems they don't know what to do. They're trying to, make it not a big deal of Biden's cognitive abilities and the fact that Autopin was there, and it was not probably. I mean, I see it in the news there that you had somebody come forward and say, yeah, we did this and. We did the pardons, and they were paid pardons. Now, paying for pardons not something new, but the fact that shouldn't be done by Autopin.
I don't know. You say it's not something new, but I don't. Maybe on a local level, but I don't think presidents have been selling their pardons.
Not presidents, but there have been other things where that involved a pardon per se. Now the news will try to make it out, it's no big deal, but even if you go back and say, well, okay, we'll trace this back and say this was a favor or whatever. Here's the deal on that. It was an actual signature by that president. It wasn't, an intern going, yeah, let's get my cousin out. My cousin Vinny's in there. He's just dealing some drugs to kids. And he's in, but, come on, this is a deep, deep, big scandal. And they don't know what to do about it.
I think that they're just now realizing, the other side I'm talking about, that maybe this president, Trump, is not going to let it go.
He's not. That's the problem.
In a little while, I'm going to play a cut from Harmeet Dillon. She was on Tucker Carlson's show. His podcast. Very interesting interview, but it kind of talks about what we're talking about, how deep-rooted the deep state is in some of these agencies. I mean, presidents come and go, but they stay.
Right.
You know. But you know what else has kind of disappeared? Nobody's talking about it anymore. It's already become ancient history. It's the 8647. I mean, you're looking at me like 8647. That was only about what 5 days ago.
It was this week.
Yeah, Comey was on the hot seat for essentially calling out for a hit on the president of the United States. Yet right now it's like 86 what? It's amazing how they can just let stories fade away.
Let me ask you, who's they? Who is they that
the deep
lets
state?
It fade? Yeah,
and the media.
So who? Yeah, well, the media answers to the deep state. So just like you find a leaker in for a story, we got to find the person that will leak. Who is the mouthpiece, the go-to person for the deep state that sits there and somebody disseminates the marching orders, the narrative?
Yeah, Jesse Waters was asked about the 8647, and he's like us. He believes it was actually a hit. Listen.
I don't know if he made it or not. He obviously was trying to put a hit out on Trump, got caught, deleted it, and he's got a book out. Oh, what a coincidence. Any cop, any prosecutor knows the code for homicide. 8-6 isn't just a mafia slang, it's a military slang. 8-6, T-O, and a rotary phone. He was a Marine. He obviously knew what he was doing here. And he's not just any old FBI director, Martha. He tried to frame this guy for treason. Remember, he spied on his campaign. He got caught, got fired, leaked, and then ran away from Durham so he wouldn't have to answer any questions. He has called Trump a dangerous threat to the country who should be punished for the things he says. Now, I don't know if this guy wants attention for the book. And by the way, the book is about right-wing extremists who launch a terror attack in Manhattan, or if he wants to be arrested, because his life sucks. He's lost all his respect. No one likes him. And he's probably dying and goading the administration to put him in handcuffs because that's all he really has anymore going for him. This man has set the Democrats back again. Everybody with common sense knows what this guy meant. Just like we knew it was MS-13 on the knuckles, Jessica. Everybody knows 8647. So the whole country sees this, and then they lie about it. And then this is the guy that weaponized the entire Justice Department against President Trump. And it just reminds everybody the lengths the Democrats will go to lie. Meanwhile, Trump, he's trying to make peace. And this guy's calling for his head. I hope the Secret Service knocks on his door at his little beach house and pays him a visit, because this can't stand. After 2 attempts on Trump's life, you can't take this lightly.
Yeah, but it's not going to really happen. The Secret Service ended up interviewing Comey. They let him go.
Mm-hmm.
They let him go, and it's all fading away. It's no big deal. Nothing to see here. Just keep moving along. Unfortunately,
right.
This is how the left is punished for most things that it does wrong. I mean, there are demonstrations that the left does. Heck, the left burned down some cities in 2020. They had riots. They burned down. There were no major punishments for them. But yet, it's funny. I said to my wife yesterday, we were talking, and I said, if we had gone to D.C. in January of 2021 for the demonstration, there's a good chance if they opened the doors to the Capitol and we were in that area, we might have just followed along with the group, just walk in, because they walked into the Capitol, most of the people, like it was a tour group. And they stayed within the roped lines, and they looked around at the different things, and it was like they were on a tour. I mean, the police stood to the side when the doors opened, like, come on in. And a lot of those people ended up in jail. I said, naive as we were, we probably would have ended up in jail just for being part of that group. I think a lot of innocent people were really punished for no good reason in this last administration, which by itself turns me off to the Biden administration. I mean, Biden punished people for no good reason. He was an evil guy, and yes, he was demented. Yes, he was diminished. I know all that stuff, but he had moments of clarity. Maybe it was the medication he was on. In those moments of clarity, he accepted his role in this whole play, this whole performance. He's not a good guy. And his wife, by the way, I think she was the power behind the puppet.
Yeah, and she's a piece of work too. And the stuff look at some of the things she did in the White House. She took DEI and really pushed the boundaries left, no right, but totally left, and distorted it to where it accepted a lot of weird stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, look, you know what? Speaking of accepting, we need to take a break. So if you can, like and share the show.
Wake up on the right side with Right Side Coffee.
Available at rightsideshop.com. Okay, we're back. It's the Friday edition of It's Another Day with Jim and Bill. And my cohort in crime is in our mobile studio today.
The mobile studio on the
Yes.
well, you know what? Actually, I could do this in the conference room, but I don't know how to say it any other way than we have some unlike-minded people that are right outside that door, and I was going, oh no, feel free to do that, but we'll be quiet when we walk in. Yeah, when I'm talking about something
Hey,
DEI.
you got any rooms for this weekend?
Well, no, I'm sure it would be something if they heard us talking. Well, what we just talked about, all of a sudden they would. Democrats, and this is a good point. If it were a person that were conservative, they would be compelled to bite their tongue. They would just bite their tongue, turn around, and walk out with respect. I would do that. But Democrats see it as an opportunity to engage in attack, and that is what they become a part of. And that's something that I've noticed. Like, the two soon to be engaged, the couple, that worked at the Israeli embassy that were gunned
what a
down.
tragedy! What a real tragedy. Do you know that? Do you know that one? I was going to say, do you know that one of the couple? I believe it was the young lady. She was a devout Christian.
Yeah. To my point, on social media, on the news, they are diminishing those people, saying that they were, basically terrorists anyway.
Unbelievable.
They're doing everything, so they're justifying the hit.
They're making the victim the villain.
Right. And I'm sorry, a hit's a hit. And look at Luigi Mangione. He became the hero instantly on that. Now, I'm not saying that Brian Thomas was a good guy. I'm not saying he's a bad guy. We don't know the real story, and it's not for the lying media, to sit there and explain it to us to fit their narrative,
Well, I think that they're trying to do the same thing with this guy. They showed him being pulled out of the museum. Did you hear the story behind what happened? I thought it was interesting. Let me just give you, if you didn't hear it, a little thumbnail description of what he did. He paced back and forth out in front of the museum, witnesses say, and when the couple and another couple came out of the museum, he approached them and without any kind of warning, he fired into them. He killed the couple right there and then. I understand he unloaded the gun. Then he walked and tossed the gun into the shrubs. And then he walked into the museum, the Israeli museum, and I guess it was raining out, and he was all disheveled and wet, and he walked up to I guess it was a service lady, and she said,
Right.
"Oh, you," and he looked shaken. He looked shaken. He just killed 2 people, but they didn't know it inside. So inside, the lady said, "Sit down, sit down. Can I get you some water?" This is the Jewish lady in the Israeli museum being kind. She didn't know this was the killer. She just thought it was a victim. She thought he had seen something terrible that just happened. And "Can I get you some water?" And he says, "Yes." And he takes the water and he's drinking the water. And she's trying to get him to calm down. And she says, he says, what is this place? He says, it's our museum, a Jewish museum. Do you like it? He says, this is what she said, "I hope not." And then she looked at him kind of askew, like, "What? You hope?" And he pulled out his scarf, the Muslim scarf, and he yelled something about, what was it, Palestine forever? The chant that we all have seen. He started to say it to her. She couldn't believe it. Security guards came up. I guess the police came in, took him, and dragged him out. And as they're dragging him out, he's screaming at the top of his lungs, "Palestine forever," or something like that, or "Free Palestine," or some ridiculous. What was interesting, and nobody's talking about this, if you see that guy yelling that chant as they're taking him out, the killer is saying, "Free Palestine." And in the background, you hear someone yell, "From Hamas." They don't mention the "from Hamas." That obviously is some Jewish person inside the museum who's countering his chant with, "Free Palestine from Hamas," meaning get rid of Hamas. The kid, the killer, meant from Israel, but somebody behind the camera was finishing his sentence. They never mentioned it. The media didn't say a word. I'm thinking, wait a second. These are news people. Even that little comment at the end would be enough for somebody to say, "Did you notice that somebody was finishing his sentence?" Nobody picked up on that. Nobody picked up on that. You can listen for yourself. But this nice lady in the Israeli museum was being kind to him, and this vicious animal had just done the most despicable thing to. He would have done it to her had he had a gun and some more bullets.
Yeah, he didn't care.
No. It's interesting. The new Justice Department head down there in D.C. is Jeanine Pirro, Judge Jeanine from Fox News. And, boy, talk about jumping into the fire. I don't think she's unpacked her bags yet, and all of a sudden she has something like this to deal with. She gave a press conference yesterday. Listen.
As I speak right now, there is an individual who is being presented in court and charged with various crimes. 31-year-old Elias Rodriguez of Chicago, Illinois, is now charged by complaint after his initial appearance before U.S. Magistrate Judge Matthew Sharbaugh with the following: murder in the first degree for the murder of 30-year-old Yaron Levshinsky, a foreign official and official guest of the United States. Mr. Levshinsky was here on official business for the State of Israel. The defendant Rodriguez is also charged with 2 counts of murder in the first degree for both Yaron Levshinsky along with 26-year-old Sarah Lynn Milgram of Kansas. In addition, there are several felony firearms charges for discharging a firearm in the middle of a violent crime and for causing the death of an individual through the use of that firearm. Now, this investigation is continuing, and as you can see, we have most of the stakeholders here today who will be given an opportunity to speak with you. But what I want to be clear about today, since this is the first time you're hearing from me, is that this is a horrific crime, and these crimes are not going to be tolerated by me and by this office. A young couple at the beginning of their life's journey, about to be engaged in another country, had their bodies removed in the cold of the night in a foreign city in a body bag. We are not going to tolerate that anymore.
Newly appointed interim U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Jeanine Pirro. I don't know whether she is going to be the actual permanent U.S. Attorney or whether she's just going to be the kind of like a gap holder for a time being.
Well,
but
did you hear the waver in her voice when she said it? You know, she was holding back just the raw emotional impact of it because
well, I don't know that you're aware of this, but she was called out in the middle of the night with Pam Bondi. She was out there. I think she saw the bodies. She saw the crime scene. It had to tear her apart. I was watching a video, Bill, from somebody, a YouTube guy that I watch on a regular basis who kind of does the streets of D.C. and goes to the press conferences and stuff. And it's an interesting YouTube podcast. But he was out there the night before last for that crime, for that at that crime scene, and he said, "I can't show you all the video because there was so much blood."
Here's what I'm seeing, and because I think there was another attack somewhere, but what I'm seeing with this and other things going on is these are not one-off onlys. They are going to be a swarm of these. They might by themselves go, well, you know, it's just a nut job out there doing this, and it's an isolated event. But if you've got a swarm of them like bees stinging all over the place, and, you know, there's nowhere safe from somebody that goes, okay, it's my turn, and you're the target. And you don't know who, when, or we will know why, because they will shout out "Free Palestine," and that's their rally cry.
The thing about this guy Rodriguez is he lived in Chicago.
Yeah.
Why didn't he do something in Chicago? No, he had to get. I don't know if he drove or took a plane. I guess he took a plane. No, I'm sorry. I guess he drove because if he took a plane, he wouldn't have been able to carry the weapon with him. But I think there's a good possibility that this is part of a coordinated effort.
Oh, I think it is a coordinated effort. And look at his last name. Come on. You know, for him to be involved in that, that tells me that, you know, he was probably paid to be there, but he's thinking he's been programmed to believe he's doing something for a just cause.
I believe he, on his Facebook page, is a member of a socialist group. And the thing about socialism, going back to Karl Marx, the guy who was the founder of communism, is that they don't just hate the Jews, they hate religion. They hate God. And I mean, Karl Marx was a Jew. You would have thought, if anything, he'd be sympathetic to Jewish people, but he despised Jewish people, but he despised Christians too. And by the way, it wouldn't have bothered him that one of the people in this attack was a Christian, like we talked about. They don't like religion. It goes against what they believe, that they're godlike, that their experience is godlike, meaning life and their belief. It's a terrible thing that we're up against right now. It is, but and by the way, you probably heard they're talking about taking the foreign student ability away from Harvard.
I think they did.
Yeah, that's a big deal. That is
Trump. Apparently he has banned Harvard from enrolling international students. So
yeah,
I believe that came down late yesterday. I could be wrong, but
no,
that's what I have in my notes.
They are, and they're really upset. Not just Harvard, but all of the liberals in Boston are upset because Harvard controls a lot of Boston, a lot of Massachusetts.
Yeah. Well, interesting. What state is right next to Massachusetts?
Yeah, I know. And I know where you're going with this. New Hampshire.
New Hampshire? Yeah, and the governor there just said, you know what? Sanctuary cities are done in
Do you
this
know she's
state.
not
That's it.
she's not a conservative.
I know.
She is a libertarian, probably, but she's not a conservative. But she's had
So
it.
good for her on that one.
Yeah, she's had it. This is is it Kelly Ayotte, I believe, the governor of
Yeah, I have it on
New
the next
Hampshire?
page. I'm not going to,
Yeah,
because
it's
kind of
Kelly
in
Ayotte.
cramped quarters here. So
She is. She said enough of this nonsense, and she pulled the plug on sanctuary cities. I don't know how anybody can justify legally sanctuary cities. To me, they are a violation in and of themselves of our laws. You cannot be an island in a sea. If the sea is a sea of law, federal law, you can't say, well, no, it may count for everything around us, but we're going to stay, in our own little world here. If they can make sanctuary cities legal, what else can they make legal? Can they make prostitution legal? Can they make murder legal in their cities?
what they're saying is they do not have to. If they don't agree with a federal law, they have the right as a state to say, no, we do not accept and adhere to that law. Now, there are measures, and it's a lot of measures that they would have to go through to get that, but that would actually be where they are no longer a part of the United States, and that's a damn near impossibility to happen. They are bound by the federal law that they have to adhere to it. They have rules to follow too. But what they're doing is what the Democrats are doing, saying, you know what, I don't like it, so screw you.
Well,
why
aren't we hearing lawmakers in Congress, in the majority at least, say, hey, sanctuary cities are illegal, and we're going to put a law together that is going to make sanctuary cities, more specifically, we're going to say sanctuary cities by themselves are a violation of federal law. Period. End of sentence. I mean, it already should be a fait accompli, as they would say. But the fact of the matter is, nobody is doing it. That I don't understand it, Bill. It's so obvious to somebody. Wait, you cannot be an island in a sea of law. You can't say, well,
but they're doing it, and
we can have all the illegals in the world stay in our city because we want them to be safe here. And you can't come into our city and arrest them. Well, wait a second. Aren't you a city in our country? Aren't you a city in our United States?
I think, to be honest with you, my personal feeling is it's a coordinated effort to basically, unravel the United States of America, to make us something entirely different. I mean, look at the left's attack of capitalism. And there's a lot of lefties out there going, capitalism is the death of America, and it will be. Okay, let's just say capitalism is no good. All right. What are your choices? Socialism? Communism? They don't work. And they're worse. So where do you think you're going to go with this?
Well, I never have understood how anybody can justify sanctuary cities, but apparently they have. Maybe it's the fact that we've had Democratic presidents like Biden in office, and they just make sure that everybody turns their back and doesn't prosecute sanctuary cities.
That's what they're doing. They're saying, no, we're not going to prosecute them. The Democrats walk lockstep. They don't do something for the people that their constituents. They do it for the party. And, you got to wonder, when they get elected in there, what's so alluring to them to where they sell us, the voting public, out?
Okay. Hey, we should point out that we've switched our platforms recently, and you can't take your your ratings, as they would say in the radio business. You can't take your ratings with you, from one platform to another. I know it's sad. So we're rebuilding our audience, so to speak, and it's coming along quite nicely. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Most of you have found us, but some haven't, and we're still getting the word out. We would appreciate it if you took a moment during your busy life to like and share our show.
Wake up on the right side with Right Side Coffee.
Available at rightsideshop.com. Some people don't know what like and share means, but on most of the platforms nowadays, you have a little button, thumbs.
Yeah.
You'll see it sometimes as a thumbs up. If you hit that,
Right.
That's a like, and it actually helps us get the word out. So we appreciate that. Harmy Dillon was on the Tucker Carlson show this week. Actually, I think it just came out yesterday. Harmy Dillon was in line to be Attorney General. She's a smart lady, good lawyer, very good lawyer. And so Trump made her the United States Assistant Attorney General, which is pretty darn good. It's close enough for, quote, government work, end quote, right? So she talked about what she has faced going into this position. And it gives you an idea of just how deep the deep state really and truly is. I mean, they are entrenched. Trump comes into office, and Harmy Dillon talks about a lot of things, including crying sessions.
Yeah.
I know. Listen to this.
The Civil Rights Division is the sort of the color revolution wing of the Department of Justice. Okay, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat administration, there are career lawyers who are very focused on a particular agenda there. So when I showed up, or when the president was elected, I should say, there are over 400 attorneys in the Civil Rights Division and about 200 staff, so a total of about 600 people. And, Kristen Clark, my predecessor, anti-police, open racist, got in trouble during her term for not being candid with the Senate during her confirmation hearings on some issues. And so she had a particular agenda. She got in there and she pursued that agenda aggressively. And she had all the staff to do it. Now, under the first Trump administration, my predecessor in that job pretty much left it untouched. He told me kind of like there were the career people there. If he wanted to get something done, they went to the U.S. attorney's offices. Well, I came in with a different perspective. I think it's part of the promise of this administration under President Trump to fundamentally reform the government in the way that the people voted for. And so that means in the Civil Rights Division, we should be standing up for the civil rights of all Americans, not just some Americans. We shouldn't be weaponizing the law in a particular way. We should apply those federal civil rights statutes that many of which were passed by and signed by Republican presidents and Republican administrations evenly. And the government shouldn't be putting its heavy thumb on the scale in most cases, but in egregious instances, we should step forward and right these wrongs. But what I found there was a number of lawyers, hundreds of lawyers who were actively in resistance mode. There were memos out there by former government lawyers telling current government lawyers in my department how to resist. If you're given a direct order, ask for clarification, send 20 emails, question it, slow down your response time, say it can't be done. So I was actually looking out for that when I came, and I did my week of training after getting confirmed by the Senate, and then the next week I was like, okay, guys, it's time to get to business. I want everyone to be very clear what the agenda is here. So there are 11 sections in civil rights, and I drafted memos for each of those 11 sections for the lawyers. and telling them these are the statutes. So, for example, Americans with Disabilities Act, this is a statute that we enforce, or Title VII, anti-discrimination, or some of the other federal civil rights statutes. And then that's the baseline. And then this is the president's agenda. These are his executive orders that he's put out there about anti-discrimination, about anti-DEI, about enforcing our laws equally. And that's the job. You're going to apply these statutes within the framework of anti-discrimination, even-handedly, and without fear or favor. And this catalyzed hundreds of lawyers to quit the Civil Rights Division. So,
wait, they quit because you informed them of the law?
Yes, and the law and the priorities. Their pet projects had changed. They weren't going to be able to do those the way that they wanted. And
so they thought that this part of the Department of Justice was just immune to democracy?
It has been.
Elections just had no bearing on this?
It has been. I mean, there were career lawyers there who were doing the same thing, no matter who's the president. And so suddenly their little fiefdom that had remained untouched, like Shangri-La, was suddenly having to be responsive to elections. And so
that's the definition of the deep state, what you just described.
It really
Elections
is.
have no effect. It's like there's no way to control these people. They act totally independently from the democratic system. I mean, that's the problem, right?
Well, that's what I found. And so, you know, in response to my memos, of course, they began leaking to the press. They began having unhappy hours, which they would invite supervisors, political supervisors to make their point that they were unhappy. We got the point. And they had crying sessions, struggle sessions, crying sessions in the DOJ.
They cried?
Oh, there was open crying in the halls. Crying, yes. And then one of my colleagues described to me, it was the last day a couple of weeks ago for some of them, they lined up in a phalanx and approached the elevator together, and then they left the building together, to show their solidarity for one another there as if they were persecuted.
High school students or adults?
No, these are 30, 40, and 50-year-old career attorneys in the Department of Justice. So, yeah.
That's pathetic.
It's different. You know, I come from the private sector, as you know. Over 30 years in the private sector, 18 years successfully running my own law firm, and you get to work and you put things together, and if it's not working out, you change tacks and you try something else. But there's no accountability, and so that really has been kind of an eye opener of dealing with that culture. But we're trying to change it. There are people left behind, and I actually don't care what their politics are. They can have their views. I believe in the First Amendment. The question is, are you willing to do the job under the job description as set out by this administration? After all, the DOJ is part of the executive branch. The president gets to pick the top people running it, and he kind of gets to set the agenda.
So half your lawyers quit?
Yeah, that's right.
Who did you replace them with?
So we are in a Doge period here in the government, and so I haven't replaced the people who've quit as yet. So we're making do with who's left behind, some of whom share the views of the ones who left, but perhaps weren't as able to get jobs outside, and some who I think are willing to work with us.
So there are still people in the Department of Justice who are not happy with the transition from Biden to Trump. And she has to deal with these people. She hasn't replaced them, the people who left, which maybe is a good thing. Maybe they just don't need as many people there.
The interesting thing that she's mentioning, and we knew it, but it was kind of an aha thing, where she's talking about career employees that they don't care. They're going to do what they do anyway. They have their agenda, and that is a form of a deep state right there. But I go back to Kash Patel and Bongino. Maybe they've got the same thing going on. They do have somebody saying this is the reality. That these guys Epstein committed suicide, which I don't buy.
By the way, I saw, Bill, I'm awfully glad you brought that up. I watched that comment on video yesterday, and I listened to Bongino daily. I thought he was pretty good. When he did his show, he was very energized. He was very animated with his opinions. When you watched him give this response about Epstein, it was like he was half asleep. He said,
"It's like he couldn't believe he was saying what he was saying."
He committed suicide. It was like, what? Wake up, for Pete's sakes! What's going on? It was like he didn't believe it. It was like he had to say it, but he really didn't believe it.
Right. That's what I'm saying. You're becoming a linguist, by the way. You're starting to listen to
Thank you very
how
much.
people. You're starting to listen to how people say things and put things together. Sometimes, in their message, they telegraph another message, and that's where I was with it. Going, I don't like the fact that he came out and said, "No, he committed suicide." If you saw what I saw, well, what did you really see to make you say it, and say it in that tone, that timbre? There's, like you said, he's a very,
he's an animated guy.
Yeah, he's animated. He's very, face. He's in your face with it. And this, he wasn't in your face, because he's adamant about. He believes in what he believes in. He's adamant about.
And by the way,
he doesn't believe this, so he wasn't adamant about telling you that. And the same thing for Kash Patel.
We played on this show yesterday, Dr. Baden and his reevaluation of the autopsy and all of the information, and he came out with a completely different opinion. He believed it was murder. Nobody in the media, I'm talking everywhere I look, nobody is bringing that out. It's like, okay, well, that doesn't fit. We can't talk about that. We played it for you here. If you missed it, it's on yesterday's program. If you didn't listen to yesterday's program, you'll find a pretty good segment in it with Dr. Michael Baden, who is a pathologist, a world-renowned pathologist who has done some of the biggest cases on the planet. And he was asked by the family to examine the Epstein facts.
Right.
And the results that they got from the first autopsy. He said, I'm sorry, there were strangulation marks on his neck. There were just too many things that didn't point to suicide, too many things that pointed to murder. Yet, I swear to God, everyone I listened to on the news yesterday, well, it was suicide, that said it was suicide. It's like, oh my God, is there anybody paying attention to the facts and what honest people are saying? I find it amazing, Bill. Anyway, Caroline Levitt had a little bit of a debate. She has a lot of those in her press conference, her daily press conference.
Yes, she does.
There was a reporter who was denying the fact that there was genocide of white farmers in South Africa. And Caroline Levitt, she just doesn't stand there and take it. Listen.
Sure. The president showed a video that he said showed more than 1,000 burial sites of white South Africans that he said were murdered. We know that that was not true and that the video wasn't showing that. So I wonder, why did the president choose to show that? It's not true that the video was showing a burial site. It is unsubstantiated that that's the case.
No, it is true that video showed the crosses that represent.
Which is what the president claimed.
The video showed images of crosses in South Africa about white farmers who have been killed and politically persecuted because of the color of their skin. And those crosses are representing their lives. Those crosses are representing their lives in the fact that they are now dead and their government did nothing about it. Are you disputing that there's no...
The fact that the video showed what the president claimed it showed, because it did not show that. But even more, what I'm asking you is who at the White House...
It did show that. It showed white crosses representing people who have perished because of racial persecution.
Verify the videos that the president shows, and what protocols are in place when there's unsubstantiated information being put out for the world and world leaders to show?
Yamiche, what's unsubstantiated about the video? The video shows crosses that represent the dead bodies of people who were racially persecuted by their government. In fact, the Associated Press, of all places, has a picture of that very monument, and the caption from the Associated Press is, "Each cross marks a white farmer who has has been killed in a farm murder. So it is substantiated, not just by that video and the physical evidence that everybody saw on display in the Oval Office, but also by another outlet in this room, the Associated Press. So you should take it up with them if you believe the claim is unsubstantiated, and that's a ridiculous line of questioning. John, go ahead.
Unbelievable. This is amazing. This is the mentality of the Washington Reporter for the most part. The facts be damned. The truth be damned. The only important thing is the narrative that we have to present to our audience, to our readers, to our viewers.
Yeah, it's a narrative that they got to do, and what they've done, and they've made it an art. They can't get past Carolyn Levitt because she's better at it than they are, because the right has observed what you're doing. You sit there and you take a big breath, and then you go, no, that's a lie. There's nothing to substantiate it. I'm not going to shut up. I'm going to talk over you because I'm a Democrat, and that's what I'm about. I'm going to sell you what I tell you that you have to believe.
Well, she said, it's amazing. The guy, she would say things, the crosses were there that represented the white farmers who were either murdered or persecuted in South Africa. And the guys, well, they're unsubstantiated, but that's not the question. He wouldn't accept her answer. He, like you said, he wanted to talk over her and keep his narrative going. And she wouldn't let him. She wouldn't let him do it. I'm sorry, folks.
No.
And
that, I'm proud of her of that. And see, the other thing is, now this happened in the debate, where, Trump is debating, but they controlled the microphones there. It was funny. Trump would sit there and go, no, that's it. They'd cut his mic off. But when a Democrat like Joe Biden or Kamala or whatever wanted to sit there and get their little challenge in, they left their mic up. They cut Trump off. They do that to you. But at a press conference, we have control of the microphones, or we should have control of the microphones. And that's where they're having a problem. They cannot sit there and get their diatribe through.
Well, they have, I think they have deep staters everywhere in Washington.
They do.
And, we talked about Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and Pam Bondi. Pam Bondi she's in the Department of Justice. She's in the same department as Harmeet Dillon. You heard what Harmeet Dillon say. The place is infested with people who don't like the Trump administration. And you can't fire everybody, folks. You just can't do it. You'll have a building with a lot of empty seats. So the problem they've got to figure out a way to get the people who are staying there, even if they don't believe in their mission, they've got to at least do an honest job. And that's tough. I think Bongino and that could be the core problem, Bill, that Bongino and Kash Patel are having at the FBI. It may be a sea. It may be infested with people who hate them.
If they're all career politicians, the deep state is going to sit there and build up its platform of people as high as it can go that are all with one mission.
Have you ever asked yourself, can you imagine what it must have been like for Kash Patel and Dan Bongino? They probably walk into that headquarters building and they have a nice, big, polished office and stuff. But you look down the hallway and you see a ton of people, and you got to think, most of these people don't like me. Most of these people aren't happy that I'm here. Most of these people are going to give me and our agenda a hard time. How do you make them work with you? Yes, you can issue orders. You can hear the rules, all these things. But they've gotten good at making fudging rules an art form in Washington.
Right. And I don't know how you fix it because, I could say, well, you run for office, you have a government already put together to replace those turds that are already there. But then, what kind of picture does that show America?
Well, what I would have done if I were Kash Patel, I would have gone out maybe to the field offices, and I would have done some quick interviews with some of the field office people who are not tainted by politics. They're probably more the real agents and I would have built a staff around me of loyal people who can help expand the Trump administration's agenda in that headquarters building. I don't know how you can keep everybody in the building if 80% or 75% can't stand you. All they see, folks, is a mentality in Washington. I'm sure that you probably are aware of this. You're a smart audience, but there's a mentality, and the mentality is, if we can just ride this out for 3 years, they'll be gone.
Right.
And
well, look, we have, and every country does this. We're centralized in control. Everything is in Washington. So it's easy to get a team of people there that have one purpose in mind. So, a president gets in there with a different agenda, like you said, ride the storm, and then we can go back to our agenda, or we can manipulate people all along the way, because it's easy to keep your troops together if they're all in one place. But if all of a sudden a lot of the government was dispersed to other areas, would that change things?
Hey, let's take a pause for a moment to remind you to like and share our show.
Wake up on the right side with Right Side Coffee.
Available at rightsideshop.com. We're talking about the situation in Washington as far as having a deep state really rooted in all the different divisions and departments, and that's a real problem. And I was thinking during that commercial break about how it's not just in Washington. Look at these district judges and the lawfare. Bill, every day they've made it normal for a district judge to challenge an executive rule from this White House. They're making it so that you can't run the presidency without it being approved by some local district judge.
Who's a satellite operative? Yeah.
Marco Rubio, a couple of days ago, when he was testifying in front of Congress, said something which nobody again in the media talked about. I saw him say it, and I thought I wanted to stand up and applaud him. He said during testimony, I think it was the day before yesterday, when he was talking with Tim Kaine, he said, well, what did he say, Bill? Maybe
I don't have it right in front of me,
okay,
but I remember watching the thing with Ann, and she was laughing that he was sitting there saying, not laughing at him, but just the fact that he was sitting there, he was hell-bent on getting his story through.
What I was happy with him, what he said, which brought me to cheer him, was no local judge is going to tell my department or the executive branch how to govern as far as foreign affairs are concerned. And when you think about it, all of these rulings they're coming out with about how you have to bring these prisoners back into the country, we've just sent them back to these different places, South Sudan, El Salvador, Venezuela. That is something which has to be approved by the Secretary of State. And what he was saying was, I don't care what some local judge says. He's not going to affect how I do my job. He can have all the rulings in the world. It ain't going to change a thing. And what the media isn't telling you is the guys they shipped to South Sudan, they ain't coming back.
No.
They make it sound like, well, a local judge said you have to go get them and bring them back into the United States and bring them into my courtroom. Well, good luck with that.
Who was the gentleman that was trying to challenge Rubio on that? And he sat there. He was
well, there was Tim Kaine, and there was the guy from Maryland, too, and I can't think of his name. The guy who went down there.
Yeah.
The guy who
I was watching that exchange. I was going, but
the one
Rubio handled it well.
He said the one you were having pina coladas with. It was the Chris. Oh, I can't think of his last name. He's a senator. He went down there to El Salvador. It was purely for politics, and they met in some hotel, and there was a scene where they were talking. He was talking to the prisoner, and it appeared that they were having pina coladas. They
probably were.
Yeah, they probably were. I think that the problem we have in Washington is we're going to have, if Trump is to be effective, they got to weed and pull the roots out of some of these different departments, get rid of the guys and the people who are going to be rowing against them, meaning, you're supposed to be rowing in the same direction. You're supposed to be a team. If it were a football team, think of it this way. An administration, you're a new coach, you got a new quarterback, and the team has one common objective, to go up the field and score. But in government in Washington, you have a new president. He's the quarterback. He's the guy who's going to be throwing the football. But in Washington, you have some people on your front line who are actually trying to help the other side. They're actually letting people come through to tackle you so that you can't fulfill your objective. And that's
well, you know what? That's
problem.
A score for the other side. So, they have a different interpretation of football because, well, what they've done is they put their players on our side.
I was just looking at the old clock on the wall. I wanted to play this. There's a gentleman I'm sure most people are aware of, Scott Adams. Scott Adams is a talented guy. Sad news came out a couple of days ago.
Oh, yeah.
This is the day that we learned that Joe Biden, quote, had terminal prostate cancer. And we still don't know whether that's 100% true, whether it's treatable. They're saying it's stage 4. Usually stage 4 is dire, but then I hear...
It's been around for a while, yeah. Okay.
I hear other people say, well, it may be treatable. You can only hope. But Scott Adams is the creator of Dilbert, the cartoon character. He's also a famed hypnotist, which I wasn't aware of. He revealed that he's got, by the way, a diagnosis similar to President Biden. He was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And Adams has been very upfront about it. He says that the pain is excruciating. He doesn't know whether he can deal with it forever. He doesn't believe that he's going to be around through the summer. Think about that for a second. And yet he's kind of kept his sense of humor and his personality as he fights this. And something interesting happened to him yesterday, and I'm going to let him tell you about it.
So yesterday I'm home, and I've been getting lots of people reaching out because of my recent health-related news, and but I can't talk to everybody. Like it's just continual messages coming in, and I have to kind of pace myself. So I see a phone number coming in. Somebody's calling me from some number I don't recognize, something in Florida, and I sent it to voicemail. And a little bit later, I thought, I better check that voicemail and see if that was anything I need to deal with. And the first sentence in the transcription, because the phone gives you the text version of the voicemail as well. The first sentence is, "This is your favorite president." And I thought to myself, no. Did I just send the most important person in the world to voicemail? And it turns out that I had. It was Trump, and he was just calling to check in. Now he left a semi-lengthy little voicemail, just saying he was checking on me, heard about my health situation, and then he says, you can call me back on this number. Now, obviously, I don't call him back, right? Because that would just be ridiculous. It just was a nice thing for him to say, because he called me. You could call me back on this number. So I didn't call him back on that number because I thought I'd what? It's not like he's sitting at the Resolute desk waiting for my call. I thought that whatever it is he's doing has got to be more important, than randomly taking a call from me. So I don't call him back. Hours go by. It's the afternoon, same day. It's the afternoon. And all of a sudden another call comes through, also from Florida. And I thought to myself, no fucking way. There's no way he's calling me again. And I answer it, and it's Trump. And apparently he'd heard of my situation, and he had lots of questions. I won't get into the details of our conversation because that would be inappropriate. But he was just checking on me. And he had, he wanted to make sure that I was getting everything I needed. And that was it. But at the end, the strangest thing happened at the end. At the end of the call, when he found out, the situation was kind of dire, and I was still checking out some things that might help. He said, if you need anything, I'll make it happen. And he meant it. He was completely aware of our, let's say, parallel journeys from 2015. He mentioned it. And it was just the most incredible, weird, hard to understand situation. But boy, was it fun. So anyway, that's my story. And I'm sticking to it.
That's Dilbert creator Scott Adams. Oh boy, you pray that...
That's a great story.
You pray that he has a miracle of some kind. But, we played, Bill, a few days ago, the audio from the young woman who we're talking about like 20 years ago. Her parents died the same day. This young minority woman in New York. And she was walking by a building that Trump was coming out of, and he saw her. I guess she was distraught. And Trump walked over to her and asked what was going on, and she explained. And I guess she was really just down and out. And Trump said, no, you have to be strong. This is what your parents would want you to do. And he was very comforting. This is a stranger. And then when they went away, she looked in her hand, or I guess she put her hand in the pocket, and there was a folded over $100 bill that he had slipped in her pocket just to make her life a little easier. She said, I don't think she cashed the $100 bill. I think she framed it. But it made a difference. And that's not out of the ordinary for President Trump.
He's always done that, but the left will never tell you about it. They would if he were a president for them, but they never tell you about things that he's done that are so great for people, because I think he comes from the cut that says you do nice things, good things happen back to you.
Yeah, well, he's done a lot of them. And by the way, for those who don't know, Scott Adams, the creator of the cartoon character Dilbert, he has terminal cancer, and doctors do not believe he'll be living by the end of the summer, which is terrible.
That's sad. You now, with everything that's going on in this country, and with all the technological advances we've got, you would think there would be some kind of way to stop cancer, cure it, but it just seems to be getting worse. And I've often questioned that.
I hear things, Bill. You probably have heard them too. I hear that they've actually got cures. I mean, this sounds crazy. I've heard them say they will lose billions of dollars if they actually have a cure for cancer. I mean, it's hard to believe. It's hard to believe something could be so cruel and so inhuman.
Think about this now. You look at that, and talking about a deep state, maybe a different type, but you look at the oil industry. The industry, there's more oil, and we're going to be dependent on it for a long, long time. If somebody came up with the solution to not having to rely on oil. That all that money would vanish and go away.
When I was working in Connecticut 50 years ago, I was just a child. I can remember talking to a mechanic from Wethersfield, Connecticut, who said that he or his father had invented a motor that got like 60 miles to a gallon. And it worked. They had figured this out. I'm talking half a century ago, and apparently one of the big motor companies came along, bought it up, and they shelved it. They didn't want to have efficiency. They didn't want to have a motor that could go that far. It would cut into their profits from oil.
There is a guy, he's retiring now. He's selling off his businesses, but he was, I guess he was like a tool and die. He was a design engineer. If you sat there and you wanted a certain thing built, he would sit there and design it, fabricate it, make it for you, and there it is. He got hired to go to Detroit for a particular automaker that has 4 letters in it, I believe. And they took actually a brand of car from their rival. And his job was to come up with a new transmission, he and the team under him, that would sit there and make that car more fuel efficient in the gearing ratio and, perform better. They wanted to see if they could do certain mechanical things to it. The team did it. They got it done. And they said, thank you very much. They patented the thing. They put it on the shelf and said, thank you for your work. Here are your checks. Get lost.
And
So he went and lived on a
essentially
shelf.
by having the patent for the transmission for their competition, when the competition came along with a transmission that was similar, they couldn't do anything with it because they own the rights to that patent.
Yeah, they own the rights.
Well,
and
how
they
many
could
times
also...
have you and I talked about the possibility and the probability of a hydrogen motor, and that we don't?
Yeah, you've got hydrogen. There are other possibilities out there, but that would be a whole new show. And everybody tries to poo-poo everything. Not everything, unless you absolutely positively know. I wouldn't, unless it's just
in case you don't know, hydrogen motor, it was a motor that ran on water. And the only pollution that it has at the end of the process was water came out of the back, the exhaust area. It was it worked. It was efficient. Supposedly, I've heard, this could be a lot of nonsense, I've heard that people like Tesla are looking into it in their research department as being a possible alternative to electricity. I do think one thing's for sure, a guy like Elon Musk is that kind of a thinker. He's not satisfied with what he has now. He's always looking for something that's more efficient and better, something that could be more profitable in the future.
Yeah, I do too. And hydrogen, you can make a simple hydrogen cell at home to do an experiment. And but you know what? Depending on the current you use, depends on how dangerous it could be. So I wouldn't do that. A couple of funny stories, because I know we're getting short on time. Letitia James, in a panic, she's now claiming that she mistakenly did those entries in all those loans.
Yeah, well, good luck with that, Letitia.
Yeah. Try to sell that one.
I don't know what made me say that my father was my husband. I was just in one of those moods, I guess.
Let's see. Not going to do the Germany story. You hear about the 2 female Secret Service agents outside of Obama's house?
No.
They got into an altercation, and so the one, called the supervisor and said, "You better get somebody over here before I whoop this blankety blanks blank," and you can fill in the blanks there. And apparently they're saying, well, they might have been DEI, but I guess the one person that was supposed to show up to relieve this one person and just didn't quite make it on time, and was taking their time. So these are people that are Secret Service agents, and
it doesn't surprise me.
Got these kind of clowns working.
Did you watch? Just think back 11 months to the press conferences we got from the heads of the Secret Service about the attempted assassination in Butler. It was nothing but BS and nonsense. And that was the head of the department. I'm not, and I got to tell you, folks, I like Bongino, I like Patel. I say to myself, give them more time. But this last press conference was a big friggin' disappointment. When he was talking with Maria Bartiromo, when they were talking to Maria Bartiromo, and they came out with that Epstein hung himself nonsense, it was that wasn't good enough. At the very least, even if Epstein killed himself, we need more of an explanation than I saw the stuff. Trust me, I saw the stuff. I've been here before. I've walked through the cells. I've seen the prison. I don't care about what you did. I want the facts. What the hell happened? And by the way, Bill and I said this a couple of days ago. I don't care whether Epstein hung himself or whether somebody killed him. To be honest with you, the guy's dead. I want the list of the people who participated in the criminal activities that he fostered, that he promoted. I want to see the people. I don't care how big the names are. If it's former presidents or if it's the gardener, I want to know who they are.
Well, there's a lot of big stories out there, and each one is a distraction to the other. You got to pick the biggest story that's out there. I mean, you've got the Epstein thing. You've got Comey with the 8647 in the sand. And then you've got the Biden presidency conspiracy and that he really wasn't in charge. Who was in charge? Who took care of the auto pen? How much, who was calling the shots? Probably out of the stories, that's the biggest scandal because that tears down the Democrat Party.
Hey, listen, we could go on. We could go on and on, but we got to pull the plug on this. You are doing a remote show, dare I say. If we could tell the people how you're doing this show, they would think even more of you because you're doing it above and beyond the call of duty, let's say. He's not doing it in the broom closet, but close.
I'm doing it in the latrine.
Yeah, yes. But we'll pull the plug on this one, Bill. I'm not sure. Are we doing a show tomorrow, or are you taking a pass?
Well, I don't know. We might do it tomorrow and take Monday off.
Yeah,
because,
that's true. I keep forgetting it's Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, so we may do one tomorrow. We usually start the day a little bit later. We'll see what's going on in the news. Just because I'm in a vacation area doesn't mean that I start my day bright and early because we sleep in a little bit. Yeah. The news is the news. You turn on your computer and whoop, there it is. So. And we look at the news. I mean, Jim gathers a lot of audio and stuff, but we look at the news. We talk about the stories. That's what we do. That's the formula. Oh, I didn't mean to give away the magic. Well, the magic's you and me, Jim.
Yeah, that's true. Do us a favor. Check back tomorrow. We think we'll be here tomorrow for our weekend update program. Like Bill said, that's always a little later on because, to be honest with you, we sleep in a little bit on Saturdays. I mean, that's just, we're old guys. Be nice. But on Monday, I forgot it's Memorial Day weekend. I think we may do what everyone else is doing. We may stick in a best of program and call it a day, That being said, sir, if you'd like to take us out of here, now would be an appropriate time.
Well, I think that's where I grab the controls of this plane and just go, hasta la vista, baby. We're out of here.
This is CRN America.